Welcome back to Sunny Morning here at the El Dorado Royale here in Mexico's Riviera Maya. I'm Elliot Bullman, joined this morning with Silvia Ressa, our resident expert, with an enthralling topic. We've been talking before the break about the internet and techie teenagers and the educational benefits, some of the risks now. We're going to be looking at some of the risks to watch out for with teenagers and the web.
Exactly. So let me share with you some specific situations that every parent and mother, father and mother, should really pay attention to. So using social media becomes a risk to adolescents more often than most adults realize. Most risks fall into the following categories: peer-to-peer, inappropriate content, lack of understanding of online privacy issues, and outside influences of third-party advertising groups. This is very grave and very important to follow. Cyberbullying and online harassment. Although harassment is not so much because it's more like a private statement, but cyberbullying is actually it's very deliberately using digital media to communicate false, embarrassing, or hostile information about another person. And well, it is the most common online risk for all the teens, and it's a peer-to-peer risk. So at this point, it's very important. They are not prepared, to receive cyberbullying. It just happened from the night to the morning. So all the teenagers, all the sun, they wake up, they go to school, or the neighbor, and they see something against them. It's a surprise, and they don't know what to act, right? So although online harassment is often used interchangeably with the term cyberbullying, it is actually a different entity. Like I was saying, cyberbullying, current data suggests that online harassment is not as common as offline harassment. And participation in social networking sites does not put most children at risk of online harassment. On the other hand, Elliot, cyberbullying is like a direct attack. It's quite common and can occur to any young person online and can cause profound psychological or psychosocial outcomes, including depression, anxiety, severe isolation, and sometimes tragically suicide. Another one is sexting. Sexting, they call it, because can be defined as sending, receiving, or forwarding sexually explicit messages, photographs, or images via cell phone, computer, or other digital devices, like Instagram. Snapchat, that's the other one, which I've heard, and I know through statistics that they use them. Many of these images become distributed rapidly via cell phones or the internet. This phenomenon does occur among the teen population. So, well, we have plenty to talk about, Elliot, and I would love if you actually bring some examples so that you've heard, because our children in general, your children, my children, the friends of your children, of course, they can give us all the time different examples of what are they doing up there, right?
Well, yes, is it. I mean, the online gaming world, for example, is an environment where there's so much money at stake right now in online gaming. They're actually forming leagues. But the amount of time that children are spending on online gaming and getting into these group matches, they spend hours and they don't unlock themselves from the game. So obviously, their whole demeanor, children go without sleep. They have a hard time with it. So I think there's a big risk there in terms of overexposure and that, like you said, that addiction. The dark web, which is a really big concern to me. My son told me about the dark web and I couldn't believe, what's there.
Can you describe what's in there so people who doesn't know about it, they actually recall that?
Yeah, basically, guys, there's a level in the internet, and when you look for go through a search engine like Google or Yahoo, you're looking up a particular piece of information. But there is a sub-layer of the internet, a layer of the internet that is, to the naked eye, you won't find it. But for those those that look hard enough for it, and of course, with children, they're curious, And this is one of the mistakes that parents make by not knowing what their children are really looking at. And where you're seeing it showing up, unfortunately, is especially around a lot of the violence that's going on with teenagers at the moment. So if you ask yourself, why are we seeing so much gun violence with children in schools? When those kids' computers were opened by the FBI, or they were looked into more deeply, what websites they were using, they were looking at, it was in the dark web. Because these are terrible websites, these are...
So what's the content of those websites?
It's like Nazi, National Socialism, it's cults of forming ideas, very hostile, anti-authoritarian, and, very violent, very discriminatory, disgusting sexual content, is extremely dangerous and a really bad place for any child to end up in there. So, there's curiosity, but then there are certain people, I think their mentality will draw them towards those websites. So that's, to me, there's so much more on that topic, but that's my biggest fear, is the dark web.
Well, yes, exactly. That's one of the biggest risks, and then we have the other risk we were talking about, the cyberbullying, and also when it's an obsessivity and when it's an addiction. I was saying that when obsessivity on the devices is actually when the children, they are in the phone, pretty much in the cell phone, smartphone, or the computer, the PC, the laptop, or the iPad, right, pretty much. And then when you call them over to come to you, and they, take their time, but they actually come, and they forget about the device for a moment, that's only an obsessivity. But you will detect that if it's an addiction, if you call them, they come to you, they don't want to come, you keep calling them and calling them and calling them, and they don't, and when they finally do, or you go pick them up, and they get really aggressive with you, and they look into your eyes like almost they want to kill you, while they are becoming an addiction. Or if they close the door of the room, right?
Yeah,
that could be an addiction too. And it's very important that you go with a professionist, could be a psychologist, and talk about it so she can recommend to do something about it, because other than that, then the children will go through different phases and they're not going to be pretty. And you're going to have to really stop many of the things that you do for your teenager, your children to get back on the road, to get back on track. So it would be very important paying attention to that. So later on in the last section, actually we're going to be talking about what's the solution to it, but I would like you to know by now what else is out there about cyberbullying, for instance.
Yeah.
Then you know.
Well, with cyberbullying, of course, it's very prevalent, especially amongst girls. And you might be surprised that it's kind of more gender specific, but the research I've looked at has really shown up that girls in particular have become very threatening to one another. And that bullying is where, photos or false information is spread, and rumors and gossip about a particular person. And unfortunately, a lot of that goes on in school. And the child goes into school and comes home very withdrawn, and eventually feels, the symptoms of, I'm being bullied, but I haven't, been bullied in the traditional way. The school bully, you think, is somebody who's physical, an aggressor. Right. But cyberbullying has a very different type of way of attacking an individual, right?
Exactly.
And it's really unfortunate, and it really manifests itself in the psychology of the victim, and also a lot of schools don't have a policy how to deal with it.
Exactly.
I mean, it's been bad enough trying to deal with regular bullying, and now you introduce a layer of internet cyberbullying. How do you show it? And kids have had to save messages that they've got really horrible WhatsApp messages and aggressive, this ongoing. It used to be like the phone calls, right? It used to be like threatening phone calls. Now it's like digital types of threatening and abuse.
They're exposed, right, to everybody.
So people have to save that horrible content to show it to a school principal or a prefect to say, I'm a victim here, And
also they have to be responsibility not only for the victim, but also for the person who are actually the origin of the bullying. The parents, they got to take care of their children as well. They need to re-educate with therapy for sure, because if they are actually molesting somebody with cyberbullying, it's because they have some psychological issues for sure.
Absolutely.
And maybe the parents as well, not themselves necessarily, but I mean, like, maybe you don't have all the time to give them the proper attention to your children, or maybe you feel that you are actually talking to them, but they feel that unattained, that you are not giving them enough attention. Maybe you think you do, but maybe, which is the fact? The only fact is that the person is actually doing cyberbullying. And if that it's happening, then somebody is responsible for that as well, not only the kid.
So let's go really and look at now what parents can be doing to help to open up the issue and to create a dialogue with their children and to have some controls, because I think parents need tools, right?
Yes, of course.
What are the tools?
Well, first, I will tell you that and in the next section, but I would like to tell you first about what kind of distress could be presenting. In Facebook, there's something called Facebook depression. Researchers have proposed a new phenomenon called Facebook depression, defined as depression that develops when preteens and teens spend a great deal of time on social media sites, such as Facebook, and then begin to exhibit classic symptoms of depression. Social media might trigger depression in some adolescents. Acceptance by contact with peers is an important element of adolescent life. The intensity of the online worlds proved to be a factor that might trigger depression in some adolescents. As with offline depression, pre-adolescents and adolescents who suffer from Facebook depression are at risk for social isolation and sometimes turn to risky internet sites and blogs for help that might promote substance abuse, unsafe sexual practices. This is very important because it's very common, or aggressive or self-destructive behaviors. And that's exactly what we're talking about, Elliot. And definitely, but in the next section, of course, I will be guiding or giving you some guidelines for you to understand what's happening into their minds and how can we as parents prevent some of these matters.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to basically continue straight away with the idea of the solutions and what you can bring to your children. So whether it's at home or whether you're at school and you're a teacher and you're looking for ways in which you can approach this situation. Of course, it's a delicate situation and how to approach it. Sylvia, give us some ideas of what tools are out there now for parents, teachers.
First of all, it has to be communication. And everybody say, I communicate with my kid. I mean, I have covered that. But trust me, if they are presenting the situation, yes, I believe you. I really do believe you that you are communicating with your child. But it's just not a proper way of doing it. And words are magical, so they can build somebody up or they can push it down. Or they can close that door for you, okay? So wait for us in the next section, come back to us, and then we're going to provide you with all those guidelines that they are very, very necessary. So stay with us here at Sunny Morning, here at El Dorado Royal Resort.
We'll be right back with you after the break.